In this episode, I talked to Jason Van Orden about his history of online training and building authentic audiences.
Welcome to the Online Course Coach Podcast, brought to you by TrueFocusMedia.com. Whether you're a beginner or expert, this is the podcast for the latest in online course creation tips, news, interviews, and ideas. And here's your coach, Jeff Long.
Welcome back to another episode of the Online Course Coach Podcast. This is the authentic podcast, the podcast that looks honestly at how to teach people with online courses. And so this is not something where I'm here to market a bunch of stuff or tell you, how to trick people into buying your course. No, this is really all about authentic audiences. And today, Jason Van Orden shares a lot of insights and strategies on how to build, grow, and serve your audience. I first heard of Jason on his podcast and listened each week to the help that they were giving. He had a business partner on each podcast with him, and then they do interviews, much like this podcast. And it's actually one of the reasons I have my own podcast today, because I got started listening to Jason and the Internet Business Mastery podcast so many years ago. It really encouraged me, inspired me. And so I joined their membership site to learn a lot of the strategies he was teaching on how to sell digital products, how to grow an audience, and really how to make it in this online world. Back then it was really new. And in the interview, Jason talks a lot about that. So I was able to create some products, create some training, and make some money doing it, which was pretty cool. And so Jason had a membership site way back then, and that was even before, membership sites were really popular or as effective or whatever. I mean, this was in the infancy of this whole thing. And I remember in our group, a new guy came in, and his name was Pat Flynn. And he joined, he talked about a course he was creating for architects and a little bit about his background, how, from what I remember, he either lost his job or he wasn't able to get a job. I think he lost his job. And so he created a training product and sold it, and it grew like wildfire. And so little did I know that Pat would go on to be a power player and help a lot of people. So it was really cool. I remember him. I remember his interview specifically because years after that, I was like, oh, that's Pat Flynn, the Pat Flynn that I know. So for any of you that know Pat Flynn and smartpassiveincome.com, that's a little history there. I've gotten to meet Pat at several different conferences over the years, like Podcast Movement and FinCon and Social Media Marketing World, and have some good friends of mine that are good friends of his. And so that's always fun to hear him speak live, as well as all of his videos and podcasts. And so today we're going to be talking about consulting and why experts like Jason are able to charge a premium price. Now, you'll hear how many different ideas Jason has. In fact, we could have talked longer and it probably would have been even more of a fire hose, but I really wanted to focus it to a short interview where he would give specific actionable strategies. Because he is so intelligent and experienced, I knew that if we went much longer that, it's just going to be overwhelming. So one of the things he talks about is consulting. He now does a lot of consulting. He has his prices on his website. He's very open and transparent about that. And, it's interesting with coaches and consultants, you're not just paying for the time you spend with a consultant, whether that's 1 hour or half a day or whatever that is. You're paying for their extensive experience and industry expertise, right? It's an investment. And that's one way, or that's one reason, that I hire coaches myself. I also take expensive and non-expensive online courses. I go to conferences, and I regularly invest in my own growth. So what are you doing to invest in your growth? And that doesn't just mean in your business. It could be in your life, in your family, in your health. Do you have a health coach, or do you have content or courses or podcasts you're listening to that help you in all aspects of your life? My good friend Dan Miller recommends spending at least 3 to 5% of your income on self-improvement. So again, this could be courses, conferences, and coaching. Oh, those are all C's anyway. So like I said, that's what I do myself. And at first, years ago, when I first started back in 2003, I was hesitant to spend money. I was thinking, oh, that's a lot of money. I can't afford that. But I got to a point where I could view it as an investment. And so that's one reason I provide coaching. I know that I can help you find clarity on your idea, help you create your course so your audience will want it, and market the course using proven methods. And I not only share my process and strategies for creating the best courses, I have a lot of industry experience, both with companies and large organizations and businesses, as well as industry leaders, industry experts that aren't, a big corporation. So I'm able to really find the best strategies, those proven methods that work, and apply those to my coaching students. So it really helps. I can answer questions and even help avoid making common mistakes. So if you are kind of sitting on the sidelines, maybe you have an idea for a course, but you're nervous, you don't know what to do with it, or maybe you have a course and the sales really aren't where you were hoping they would be, I can help you. So to learn more about my coaching, go to onlinecoursecoach.com/coaching to learn more. So with the interview with Jason, listen to how he talks about creating authentic relationships with people. I love this part of the interview because he talks about really how you used to be able to get away with being over the top with your marketing, right? But now you have to be authentic. You have to be authentic in your words, in your videos, in your course, in your promotions, in your emails, everything. And I really like that because I think that's one of the strengths of this podcast. And one thing that makes this podcast is unique is the authenticity. At least I hope so. I hope that's coming through. That's my goal. I'm not here to hawk a bunch of affiliate promotions and different things. I really want to share my expertise and have experts on so we can all learn from them and all learn together as we grow. We're always learning. We're always growing. Because to me, it's a group effort where we're all trying to learn more and become more effective teachers. Just yesterday, I met with a guy who used to be in the youth group. I was one of the leaders, and he was a student and kind of mentored him. He went off to college, and now he's back in town. And he was asking me some questions about life, about jobs, about how I found my passion and my career and built it. And it was really encouraging, or it helped me. It made me, it made me feel good that I was able to help him. And so we all want to help each other, right? And that's what this podcast is about. And that's what teaching is about. Whether it's online or in person, I don't care. We want to help each other improve, grow, and get better. So let's dive right into the interview with Jason Van Orden. Jason helps thought leaders to reach a larger audience with their ideas, create new income streams for their expertise, and build business models that align with their goals. As a consultant, trainer, and strategist, he draws from 13 years of researching top internet influencers, as well as personal experience gained by launching over 60 online courses, teaching more than 7,000 entrepreneurs, and generating $6 million in online course sales, and 8 million downloads of his podcast. His mission is to help more visionaries with impactful ideas to reach the people they serve best and the problems they are uniquely positioned to solve. Well, Jason, thanks so much for being on the Online Course Coach podcast today.
Hey, Jeff. Yes, my pleasure to be here. Really excited.
Now, I know you are not brand new to this whole online course and information space. So give the audience a little background about where you got started in this online information and training space.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my interest, and I know you talk about this, how you have this kind of background of teaching. My interest in teaching goes back to my dad always being an educator, and I can see very much in hindsight how I kind of just picked up a skill and a love for teaching. And when I was at university, I had the opportunity to teach a couple classes and absolutely loved it. But, it was never really on my mind to, become a teacher per se. But when I discovered kind of the online, well, really it was offline that I first discovered, this thing that sometimes gets called information marketing. And, the quick of it there is I dove into a lot of marketing back when I used to be in a lot of bands, various bands. And at one point I was really serious about one of those bands. And, you got to be good at marketing to get people to buy your albums and come to your shows. And in studying this great like guerrilla online marketing for my band, I just realized, oh, wow, I'm actually pretty good at this stuff and I enjoy it too. And so, I started doing consulting around that. And that's eventually led me to trip across, like Dan Kennedy and some guys who talked about information marketing, package up your knowledge, your expertise, and, sell it in a useful way to people and they'll pay you for it. And the first time I experienced, I thought, hey, let's try it. Let's see what happens here. And I had, because of an association I was involved in, I had basically in a mailing list, like a physical mailing list of about 80 people. And I decided, okay, I'm going to do a seminar. Like these guys, they say, hey, they talk about their first time doing a seminar or whatever. Like that would be awesome. I loved teaching when I was in college. Let's see if I can get 25 people in a room and I will just tell them everything I know about direct marketing. So what, it was a lot of like, headlines and some copy tips and how to get attention through snail mail. Cause this is like 2003. So email was certainly around, but direct mail was still quite a thing. Actually, direct mail is now quite a thing again. Everyone's online again. But I launched this thing. I managed to get 25 people in the room. I charged $200 a pop. I made $5K plus a little extra from selling some stuff at the end of the thing. And so I think in all, my net profit was 8,000 something. I just like, okay, that's awesome. That's it. That's cool. Like in one day I got paid that much to teach something I just love. And there's no reason I'm going, I'd been an engineer. I was still an engineer at the time. And I thought that was going to have to be my career, which I was not happy doing. Like I very quickly figured out I'm not a corporate world type person, too much of a rebel, too freedom minded, don't like my own creativity to drive things and not someone else's. So that's the moment I became and eventually within a year, I was selling this to people locally, but eventually that ran out of like people in my network and their friends and whatever. I'm like, well, I need to find more people to sell this course to. And I guess I probably left out one little detail. I recorded the one-day seminar. So I had CDs, physical CDs, and I was burning these things off of my PC and printing out my slides into like a manual that I would send people. Again, still selling it for $200 a pop. And I'd post in like, and then I was like, okay, I got to go online. And so I'd post in forums, articles, and like put my byline at the bottom. There was no social media yet. There was no YouTube or any of that, any of the stuff that we use now. All I can remember really at the time that I did was post in forums. That was the thing. And I guess a bit of keyword optimization and, search marketing was the thing then too. Anyway, 2005, after about a year of looking around for different possibilities to sell my stuff online, and I was selling this course online, the word podcasting popped up on my radar, and I immediately was just very intrigued. The musician in me liked and knew about the audio part. The teacher in me saw the potential there. The marketer in me saw the potential. The engineer in me understood all the technicals. So it was just this, beautiful convergence of interests and skills. And so that turned into me launching a site and launching courses and selling courses on that. And anyway, ever since that first seminar that became a course, it became an online thing and led me to podcasting. I've, in one way or another, myself been creating brands and businesses around teaching and information and, facilitating through my own expertise and teaching others how to do the same. And it's just something that I'm very passionate about because there's such a huge opportunity now for anyone to step up and share something that they find interesting, valuable, compelling. And there's people out there that, would love to hear it from you. So I think that's just a really cool thing those are the times we live in now.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And that's how I think I was first introduced to you back in the day, was through your podcasts, and, devoured that and then joined your membership site and some other things. And so is there something or is there something that comes to mind maybe that you're most proud of? It's either maybe a student you helped or a product you created, or is there anything that you're, kind of proud about from that time?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I look back and there is an advantage to having kind of that beginner's naivety, and one thing I left out is that shortly after I did that seminar, um, I quit my job, and I did it very cold turkey. It was like, I just quickly reached a point where I was like, I can't stand this anymore. I think I have enough ideas of something I can go and start making some money with. I had these very optimistic like projections of what I could potentially make with my marketing and consulting experience and my information marketing. And so, I'm proud of the fact that I did take such a leap. I mean, it's not everybody's path to do it that way, but again, whether naivety or just courage or a little bit of both, it took some courage to quit my job. It took some courage to say, I'm going to do a seminar that I sell myself and ask people to pay $200 to do it. Right? It took some courage to try podcasting when it was a brand new thing in 2005 and like hardly anybody knew. I mean, Google didn't even know about it. I searched for podcasting the first time in Google and it tried to correct me. It said, "Did you mean something else?" So it's and I still like to think that that's part of me. Maybe there's a little bit more. I don't know if it'd be jadedness, cynicism, and I definitely wouldn't say risk aversion. Just I know what I need to know now, and so maybe sometimes that. That spark of naivete doesn't come up quite the same.
Sure.
But that's something I think from those times that I really look back on and made a huge difference in my life.
Well, maybe there's more wisdom there with being more experienced, that you don't necessarily just jump off the deep end. But I think as entrepreneurs, we're all risk takers in a way,
Absolutely, yeah.
and that's what, you can either look at it as fear and retreat, or as excitement and proceed. And that's one thing that's driven me throughout the years of, I've never had and I'm using air quotes here, I've never had a real job being an employee. I've just always kind of created my own thing. And that's been exciting and a little scary along the way, but I wouldn't have it any other way. In fact, it's funny you mentioned, you kind of ran some quick numbers on what you thought you could make. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs do that,
Yeah.
I had business partners when I first started the company almost 15 years ago. And one of our first sales, we try to do a rough calculation. We're like, man, if X amount of people buy, and blah, 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 we're going to make, some astronomical number. And of course it never came true, but it was just exciting because our first sale, the first person we talked to, we made a sale. So we thought, wow, that was easy.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yep.
So what would you say have been some of your keys to your business success over the year? Is it that risk thing, or is it something else that maybe it's your marketing side, or what do you feel like is the reason for some of the successes you've had?
It's kind of interesting to me that I brought up that as the answer to your last question, because I do think, that business, the podcast you mentioned that turned into a business that I ran for and grew for like 11 years. Mm-hmm. About 3 years ago, I moved on from that because I needed new challenges. And I think I was maybe a bit blocked up by kind of, when you know what's at stake, or you've already had success behind you and you're feeling the pressure of, like the band I like using music analogies that has their sophomore album. It's like, oh, well, we had all those hits on the first one. How am I going to like keep up to that on the second one? And so it's I've had to refine, I think, a little bit of that, and I wouldn't attribute it now at all to naivety, but just to following intuition, quick start, sometimes just experimentation. That's what I would say. And I'm a strategist, and I advise people on strategy, and I'm very good at strategy, and that's what I like talking about when it comes to creating courses and selling them online, growing your brand, growing your audience. And that means that there's a very logical side to that, but there's also a very intuitive side. And my approach to strategy is very much that it's a series of hypotheses and experiments. And so when people take my classes or take my workshops and we're helping them work whether on their content strategy or building their authority or whatever it might be, certainly there's a framework of stuff that they want to know based on my longevity and experience online, kind of what are the factors at play there. But in the end, what I'm asking them to do is like, okay, I've given you the factors and we've dug up the criteria that are important to you. what feels like a good experiment now to try? What's the next best or experiment to put into play and see what happens? So that ability to look at things as an experiment, and actually there's like 2 or 3 other lessons right in what I just said right there. Looking for frameworks instead of formulas. It's very, very easy, especially in the marketing climate online, or just really anything, forced us to get very fixated on buying and selling formulas, because it's super sexy to say, hey, I've got the answer. This thing worked for me. I know it's going to work for you. And the truth is, it doesn't work that way, right? But when you can find somebody that can kind of break down the most important elements and go, here's a framework. And now you can put on top of that lattice work, who you are, what your message is, what you want to do, who your audience is, what feels good to you. And, you will be ahead of the game, having based it on some foundational things that, I or someone else have seen in their experience. But at the same time, it's not so prescriptive to just choke out what feels true and important and aligned for you. So experimentation, looking for frameworks over formulas, and not losing touch with your own what's fun to you, what's your unique genius, what are your strengths, what do you want to bring to the world? Because we start chasing tactics. The sales letters can be very, very compelling out there for all these courses. And, it's nice to think that, that next level is maybe just one hot tactic away. But if you lose, and this happens to everybody at some point, you just have to realign. But if you lose touch with what energizes you, with what you want to bring to the world, eventually your messaging, your ability to teach, to create great content, to create unique, truly unique value and perspective to put out in the world is just going to get cut off, and you're going to burn out, or you're going to just start sounding like everybody else, and you'll get drowned out in the noise. There's a number of things that happen there, but that's kind of what I would sum up there, is like, regularly coming back and checking in with yourself and what you want and need, and aligning that with your strategies and your business model, frameworks over formulas, and looking at things as a series of experiments.
That we could unpack that probably for the rest of the show here. But one thing you said specifically, I just love, is the experiment side. So many people I talk to, whether it's, my coaching clients or just people like a social media marketing world, where we met, and they kind of feel this pressure, like, I've got to create this successful course. And once I launch it, if it doesn't make X amount of dollars, it's a failure. And it's like, no, it's a
and believe me, I've been there. I've fallen into that trap.
Yeah.
It's easy to do it sometimes and go, totally.
And so I think having that idea or attitude of having it be fun and an experiment and almost like a journey, not a destination, is key. Because if not, then you're going to go crazy, and you're going to think that you're a failure when you're probably not, just because it's experimenting, like you said. I love that.
Yeah.
So when somebody's planning out a course, how should they really test their idea before they spend a lot of time creating the course? Do you have any strategies for that?
So you're talking about like the actual like production of the content, the audios, the things like that, are kind of like the planning of curriculum, or
even before, like the planning of curriculum. Hey, I've got an idea for
like high level.
For this course. How, what should a student or somebody think about in that process?
Here's one of the so when I first got started online, and this is still kind of the predominant idea. It was your first thing is going to be that small ebook, or that very short course of just a handful of videos or whatever. And there's a couple reasons for that. Maybe it's easier to sell that first thing when it's lower price, kind of a smaller thing. And then there's this idea that you build out your portfolio and have increasingly bigger price points of stuff after that people can move up to. And then the other thing that's predominant is that's like, oh, well, I want to build my education business in a scalable way. And that means digital courses. And that way I'm not limited by, inventory. I'm not limited by my time or any of those things. And, there's some wisdom in there, but I, more recently have just flipped on its head that whole idea. And I can tell you what I mean more specifically and why. Number one, and in fact, this is what I did. Like I said, 3 years ago, I was feeling burned out in my last business. I was ready to move forward. And instead of diving right into like creating another course, which would have made sense, at that point, I'd probably made like at least a dozen different programs and launched at least 60 times. But I was like, you know what would be actually interesting and different for me right now to change things up? And the thing that came to mind was consulting. And of course, my mind started fighting that and going, hey, you've just spent over a decade telling people don't sell your time for money, right? But so many things came out of that. And so my advice to people, whether this is their first course or probably even if it's their, second or third or fourth course, is that doing some kind of higher level, higher touch, more closer in proximity to the student type experience. And I think consulting is a great place to start. Has so many huge advantages. Number one, you're going to be able to charge more money out of the gate for whatever the thing is, and you don't have to create a ton of materials because that's not going to at first be the expectation of what they're buying. And that it can be the one-on-one consulting, or it could be like some kind of group program, a series of webinars and presentations or whatever. So that's number one, is that you can charge a higher price, which is always great. Why not make higher amount of cash as soon as possible for your knowledge? Yeah. Number two, you are going to learn so much about what is most valuable to that target audience, where the unmet needs are, what is the language and the messaging that resonates with them most, which things that you put together and ideas do you have that they go, oh yeah, that was awesome, that really helped me with that thing. Where are the holes maybe that you overlooked because you've forgotten what it's like to be in their shoes? And some people do this and they think of it as like a beta course, and that's great. My preference often is I'm going to go find somebody to pay me a lot of money to consult them through this new process I have. And then I'm going to learn all this stuff, make a lot of cash, learn a lot about the ideal audience, refine my own process, get some results and some testimonials. And then from there, have it trickle down into, okay, now that I've got that sussed out, it's easy enough for me to split it out or, fracture it from there into the ebooks or the smaller course or the membership site or whatever. And one other small reason for me that was also such a great approach was that and in hindsight, I see this in my last business, part of me was atrophying, and that's because I do my best work and get my most energized and fulfilled when I do have more direct interaction through facilitating workshops, through one-on-one consulting, through higher price, high touch, smaller group type programs. And because my last business was so focused on, well, this is what you're supposed to do, digital, scalable, arm's length, don't tie yourself down, freedom, lifestyle design, I didn't recognize that I was choking this part of me that was where my unique strengths could otherwise best come through, and where, and what energized me the most. And whether that's you or not, the person listening to this, I learned so much when I am doing one-on-one consulting, or like what some people call a VIP day. I'm sitting in a room for 4 to 6 to 8 hours. Somebody's paid me to sit in the room with them and hammer through something. And that's a feedback loop that happens there that you very quickly start learning, oh, this is something I do that people really find valuable. And it's so easy to overlook what those unique strengths, that unique perspective, that, unique genius is. Or just to see it as commonplace. It's like, oh, doesn't everybody do it that way or think it that way? And that's perhaps the most valuable thing that comes from that approach, is you learn so much about yourself, and therefore you make a course that's truly, yes, there might be 500 other people that have a similar course on a similar topic, but yours is truly one of a kind, and the messaging resonates at a level that there are certain people that when they come across you, they're like, I've been waiting for somebody like you to say this to me for a long time. And now I don't want to learn this from anybody else. Let's do this. And so, that's kind of, so there's lots of little lessons to pull out of that, but that's what I think is a really important approach to this idea of online education courses and so forth.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And I like that you are going back to the personal interaction. I mean, yes, you can do that with, Facebook groups and Zoom calls or, webinars for your students or whatever, but that's still not truly really personal like in person is.
Right.
In fact, just yesterday, I met with one of my coaching clients who is from Texas, and her husband have some courses I've helped them develop and have designed their website and all that. They're actually traveling the country, meeting with their students that are going through their online course. And, she was telling me, like, financially, you look at it and you're like, that's the craziest idea ever. What a waste of time and money. But her course all is about relationships and building quality relationships. And what better way than to sit down and eat with people that have gone through your materials and seen some amazing life changes. I mean, I could go on and on with some stories. So I'm glad that you're saying that, because to the audience, and if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, this podcast is not just about, hey, make a course and never touch it for a decade. It is about finding the best ways to truly teach your audience in authentic ways. And so, Jason, I'm glad you talked about those.
And yeah, I mean, I'm so glad to hear. I mean, especially somebody who has, a practice around these things in a podcast and all this stuff around course, for you to say that, because I think a lot of that is lost sometimes in online marketing, because it comes from this background of, when this kind of stuff started, it's like, oh, I can take information and sell it online. So back when I first got started, it was kind of like the gold rush. Hey, there's gold in the hills. I heard you can make money online. And so it was like, go and look at the keywords and go look at the niches and find the thing that hasn't been tapped out yet. And so there was no consideration of like what's coming from you. And it was a lot more about marketing than it was like actual teaching and leadership and transformation. And look, the truth of the matter is today we've got a more sophisticated consumer, and rightfully so. Like, they know what it is now to buy and take an online course, because they've probably done it before, and they've probably been burned before, and they've probably seen the smarmy marketing versus people who are more authentic at it, and they're expecting more. And I think now that that early novelty of digital learning has, not that it's gone away, but it's just more commonplace now. It is going to be the offering of belonging, the offering of community, the offering of experience, the offering of a different kind of support, perspective, like all those things that you're touching on there. Like, that ultimately is what is going to help you create a thriving business, and not just the, hey, I want to get my piece of the digital ones and zeros because I heard that way you can make money doing that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's probably because my parents are teachers, and so I love that aspect. Yes, there's marketing that I love, and that's necessary, but if you're not really teaching them, so I'm glad you brought up that word community. I just love that, and so we've had different episodes on that and different things, but in your mind, what are some ways that course creators can create community? And I'm sure you'll mention some of the typical ones, but any new or interesting ones you've seen as you've studied this?
So in terms of just new approaches to
like once the course is made, like how does a course creator build that community, grow that community?
So I mean, it's I'm sure people have seen a lot of the different things, like Facebook groups have become very, very popular. And I think it's less about, which tool you use. I mean, obviously there's some advantages to it being a Facebook group or whatever, but the things that I've seen that really are, something different, something else, community building and community management. I mean, that's gotten more sophisticated too. Sure. 5 years ago, it was like, oh, there's this thing called Facebook groups, and it's an easy, before that it was forums. And it's, this easy way to let people go in there and connect with each other. And like, that was enough. Just to provide the place was enough. But now there are so many options of communities that it's those who do put the extra thought into what makes for a good community. How do you foster a common identity? How do you get people coming back regularly to interact with each other? How do you incentivize them to do that? How do you make it clear how much you are going to be a part of that community? If it's a low price membership site, you don't want to give your time away too cheap, because that can completely, if they know you're going to be in there all the time at $39 a month, well, there's a heck of a lot less reason now to pay you $1,000 or $5,000,
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
consulting, right? So there's all these decisions to be made, and I think some of the things that are working really well are, I mean, first of all, just kind of thinking those things through. And sometimes it's as simple as, okay, what is the name of our community? What do we call each other? And coming up with that. There was this thing that I heard when I went to London last year to a conference. It was a lot of business management thinkers and things like that. And somebody on stage, and I can't remember what the presentation was about, it's not important, but something that they said, which is stuck in my mind, was one of the greatest acts of service that you can do as a leader is to give, people who are looking to you, whether, for, guidance, leadership, information, hope, possibility, give them a vocabulary with which to describe their circumstances, with which to understand and have a greater awareness of and talk about their circumstances, right? And so if you think about any given community, the paleo community, like there's certain words that come up when you are somebody who follows paleo. But even more specifically, at like one specific paleo community out there, they might have their own set of words that they use, which has been formed around the ideas of kind of the central guiding figure, you, the content creator, and you've come up with your own just phrases to describe things. I'm trying off the cuff to think of an example to make
Sure.
this more concrete. I mean, one simple example is just like, you come up with your own little frameworks and give them a name, right? And make it your own by saying, oh, this is my, again, off the top of my head, trying to think of an example. Okay. Like for instance, I have, when I'm helping people really find a unique voice and story to tell around their content, I have this thing called the 3 whys. And so now sometimes the people who have taken my workshop and they interact, they can throw that out to each other and they immediately know what it means. Oh yeah, that, I think, if you go in and revisit your 3 whys, that'll help clear that up for you, right? And so there's like a shorthand that can now happen. So identity, giving the identity, sometimes that's done through swag. It's like, everybody has their t-shirts and now you have everybody posting, their pictures of themselves in the t-shirts. And so being thoughtful, having a community manager. So it doesn't need to take all your time, but at some point somebody should be in there encouraging people to, maybe asking questions to spark community and conversation. Maybe recognition, that's a huge one. Recognition. So maybe they're picking out success stories for you to recognize in the forums or on your podcast. I mean, people loved that when we would on every single podcast, we'd say, here's one of our Academy members, and we want to share a breakthrough they had. And, people would say, I almost drove off the road when you said my name. I couldn't believe it, right? That recognition does so much like tie people again to the community. So, I'm spitballing quite a bit there.
No, that's
these
good.
Are the things to think about.
I love the verbiage that, to have your own lingo or whatever, because a lot of times I shy away from that because I don't want to lose anybody or have anybody on the fringes feel confused or whatever. But at the same time, there is that community aspect, even with working out. There's, hey, do you work out or do you do P90X or CrossFit or, there's subgenres and they all have their own lingo and terms. And so I think that's a really cool concept to think
and Jeff,
more
you bring
about.
up a really good point there. I mean, you're right that you want to be careful. Like if this is your front end marketing, don't use your lingo that people aren't going to know, right?
But within your community or your,
right. Or, and the first time if you use it in a piece of content or like on a podcast, for instance, where someone might be hearing that for the first time, give it some context so they can at least kind of deduce what it might mean. And then if you have, really good onboarding sequence, when somebody does sign up for your membership site, when somebody does sign up for your course, that makes it seamless and easy for them to get in the community and starts educating them on kind of some of these the community lingo. Now it's cement as opposed to a repellent. So you bring up a good point, and that is worth clarifying for sure.
Sure. Now, I'm sure you've noticed, like I have, one of the ways or one of the differentiators between a successful course or launch or whatever, a lot of times is the size of the audience, right? So the more the larger the size of the audience, or the more in tune you are to your audience, the more successful you can be in serving them with a course or a product or whatever. So how have you built your authority throughout the years, and how can our listeners do the same thing?
Well, first thing I want to do very quickly is I want to not challenge what you just said, because it's absolutely true. The bigger your audience, the stronger the relationship and trust and resonance there, the easier it's going to be for you to fill your courses, have people come back, have them spread the word, all those things, right? That said, I want people to realize it's like, look, if you've got a network of people, you can find your first 4 students, and that's probably all you need. In fact, that's all you need to launch your first thing and get started and do the beta, right? And again, go for the consulting or the high touch, group thing. So it's like, sure, it's only 4 people, but maybe they're paying you $500 a pop to be a part of this beta thing. And also, part B of that caveat, I guess, is that because I see this all the time. Like I'll look at somebody's business and they're wondering, they want my eyes on their business to see like, hey, what am I missing? What could I be doing differently? And, if I see somebody who's got 1,000 people on a list and, they're making inconsistent money, if any, they're not trying hard. Like they haven't sold enough. And 1,000 people is enough to be making some kind of consistent income. I'm not saying it's a livable income off 1,000 people on an email list, but it's an income. By the time you get to 3,000, and these are totally general rules, right? It is going to vary from niche to niche. But in general, if somebody's got 3,000 people, and assuming they're relatively targeted and that's been done deliberately, you've got a 6-figure business. You've got a 6-figure educational online business with a list of 3,000 people. So I just wanted to point that out. Now, to take it above and beyond and amplify it from there and build your authority, number one thing is to be very, very clear about who you're talking to. And people spread themselves too thin. They choose too broad or too many different, sometimes people call this the avatar or the customer persona. You want to be very specific, and not that other people won't follow and enjoy. And, I'm sure people in here listening have heard things like, oh yeah, go and survey or go read reviews on Amazon and some of the other hacks and tricks. And while those are great, there's nothing that replaces sitting down and talking with people who are in your target demographic, your target psychographic, the kinds of people you want signing up. Have conversations over coffee at conferences, because those conversations, that's where you're really going to get into, where are the holes, where are the unmet needs, where are the things. So it starts with just that authority starts small with the conversations. And before you have and not to say that you wait to start posting blogs or doing podcasts or whatever, but I don't let a week go by that I don't have at least one of those conversations. And the reason why is by doing that, I create stuff that's more resonant. And so when I do go and do my content strategy, it's clear what my perspective is, how I'm different. I'm finding, you find a voice. So now you're up above the noise as opposed to just being one more in the echo chamber, which it's very easy now these days to be lost in the noise in the echo chamber. So it starts small with that. Now, to take it bigger, build your authority. The next thing I would say is that, have a really good point of view about something, one that, it draws from your own story. It draws from your own perspective. And I mentioned the 3 whys earlier, so this is a great place to go ahead and briefly share that. Everybody thinks about when their content in their course, the first why, which is why is it important to them? So the thing that you're putting into your course, the course you've created, the thing you're teaching, and the message you're conveying, why is it important to the person that you are selling to? That's marketing 101. What's in it for them? Well, let's take it up a notch. If you can communicate why it's important to you, why you have chosen that this is the thing that you are online and teaching, and why you feel compelled to do so, okay, now people are starting to see that you're not in it just for money. And you know what? In today's climate, consumers, they like seeing that. They like knowing that you've got a driving factor other than I'm just here to, cash in and monetize. Take it up yet another notch. Why is it important to the world? And if you can inject that in, well, now all of a sudden your course it's bigger than you. It's bigger than them. It's, and people love to be a part of something that's bigger than them. Now, all of a sudden, it has that sound of a movement, right? Yeah. And somebody might be thinking, oh, my little course about like knitting or whatever, like that's supposed to be, why is it important to the world? Well, absolutely. So here's an example. I like when I can to shy away from business examples because that's what we hear all the time, like other people selling marketing and business, right? Exactly. So let's just take one of my clients. She teaches people watercolors, right? And, it'd be very easy for her to go, why is this important to the world? I don't know. I'm just teaching people. It's like a hobby. It's not going to like impact, it's not going to change like world hunger or anything. But imagine this, okay? A lot of the people that sign up for her courses to water paint, they are, a later stage of life. They probably took an art class when they were younger, had an art teacher that, said something really lame to them and just kind of squashed the creativity or desire to create out of them. And now here they are in their 40s, in their 50s, trying to reclaim that creativity after, having their career. And, when you think of the world in terms of just what fulfills people and, the human needs that we all have, and just imagine a world where more people are reclaiming and expressing that creativity, whether on their own in their bedroom or whether putting that stuff in a gallery or online. That's a better world to live in, right? So she's not just teaching people to watercolor. Why is it important to the world? She's helping people reclaim their creativity that has probably lain dormant for decades. So if you can come up with a statement, imagine a world where more of this happens, more people are this. Internet Business Mastery, which was the podcast, way back when. Our why, how we were changing the world, we were helping people to question the status quo and find more freedom and fulfillment and not just accept what had been handed to them, because here's the internet, an opportunity to break free. Imagine a world where the statistic is like something like 80% of people are not engaged with their daily work. Imagine a world where that's half of that. Now we're cutting away and it's like, okay, now 80% are engaged with their daily work. So that was, it wasn't just what's in it for them. Why is it important to them? Oh, they want to, escape their job. What's in it for me? Yeah, sure. I want to make money, but yeah, I love teaching. And that's part of what's in it for me. Well, what's in it for the world? Well, imagine a world where more people get to have more time with their kids, enjoying more freedom, do something that actually fulfills them. So what is that for you? What is that for your course? So have those conversations, come up with the 3 whys. And, that's pretty high level stuff, but I'm telling you, your marketing is going to be better. Your curriculum is going to be better. Your messaging is going to be more unique and resonant. And, all those other like little lower level strategic and tactical decisions are going to just be much easier to make.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. There's so many things I could pull out and we could go on and on. As we wrap up here, are there any final thoughts or concepts that as you've been talking, you're thinking, we should hit this real quick before we wrap up?
There's a lot.
I know.
This, as you can tell, there's a lot of good stuff, and I get fired up about these things. But definitely, if you can take away from this conversation to go, that Jeff and I are having, to go and talk to more people that are your target market, and just be doing that all the time, you're just going to discover so much. And what I find is not only does that start telling you what people need, and then you can make your courses to meet those needs, but you start seeing, that provides me creative fuel. It's not easy to create a course and to put yourself out there online and to market it and to hope that people show up and buy it and to, take the risk that nobody buys it and you got to do it differently. And that's not easy, right? But when I'm having those conversations regularly, typically something that happens is when I'm talking to somebody and they're, pouring out their frustrations with their desire to knit the perfect scarf and they're struggling with it, or, to watercolor paint or start a business. When somebody's pouring that stuff out, my brain, and I'm imagining this is true for everybody listening to this, starts just kicking in and getting excited about how I can help that person overcome that challenge. And so when you continually are giving yourself that injection of like, oh my gosh, I just can't wait to go and create more cool stuff to solve that problem. So I think I just want to reiterate that that piece right there is to have those conversations. And then I'll just give one additional piece to juice that idea a little bit more. And that is, don't go having these conversations and saying, hey, I was thinking about starting this knitting course. I was thinking it'd be a series of videos and it would start by telling you what stuff you need. If it's about you and your idea, you're doing it wrong. Yeah. Okay. What you want to do is have conversations where you're asking people to share past experiences, current experiences, stories. And then you as the expert get to read between the lines and go, I can see people are really confused about what needles and yarn to use, right? So you ask questions like, hey, tell me the last time you picked a pattern for something that you wanted to knit. Tell me the last time that you tried to knit something that you really wanted to be good because it was going to be a gift. What happened? What challenges did you hit? What did you try that maybe didn't work so well? What do you think you'll do differently next time? And now they're talking about their experience. And then, if you are the expert that you say you are, or at least, you're living and breathing this stuff to some degree, now you're going to be able to see, oh, okay, I can see where the unmet need is. I can see where the friction points are, and I need to help people, I can help people move forward and be ready to buy my course because now I've pointed out, gotten rid of this objection that was showing up, or, make my course better because I'm realizing, I don't even have a module about that. And yet I'm seeing this trend now show up. So that's just the additional thing I wanted to layer on top of that conversation piece, because most of what people do with sending out, surveys and the kinds of questions that get asked in surveys, it immediately skews the data and doesn't get you good information back. So flip it around to what I just said there, and you're going to get so much better insight into what's really going on in the mind and the life of the people that you want to serve with your course.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Well, I appreciate all the nuggets of wisdom, and big and small and all that. And so where can the audience learn more about you?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if any of this stuff that we've talked about resonates, with you, and you'd love to have more stuff like it or go deeper, my newsletter is a great place to go. And I know there's a lot of newsletters out there these days, and you probably are subscribed to a ton of them. But I'm going to tell you that I put a lot of time and effort into my newsletter. And at the very least, you get this very useful once a week thing with 5 things that I think you need to have at the top of your radar. You scan through, and just one of them is likely to spark something for you. But even more so, when I know that there's something, because I'm having conversations with my audience that I'm excited about and want to share, that's the first place I share it. And you might all of a sudden get 5 emails, 1 a day in a row, 5 days in a row from me. But it's going to be freaking good. It's it's not boring. It's not, you're just like, hey, here's my latest stuff. And I'm frequently told, I don't read newsletters anymore, but yours, I always look forward to.
Awesome.
And, anyway, so for what it's worth, that's what I'm told. And so go over to jasonvanorden.com, click on newsletter, sign up for that sucker, and be ready for the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, to have somebody like you curate all the stuff that you're reading and learning and gathering, and that you're just giving the good stuff, that's a pretty cool, intriguing offer to sign up for that newsletter. So very cool. We'll have to check that out. Well, Jason, thanks so much for being on the Online Course Coach podcast, for giving those insights, and you've encouraged me and challenged me, and I'll be thinking about this. So thanks for being on the show here today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you, Jeff. Like you said, we could easily gone for another hour, I'm sure, but it's a lot of fun, and I do appreciate the opportunity, and look forward to hearing from anybody if something really sparked something important for them today.
Well, I really encourage you to sign up for Jason's newsletter. I know that he only puts out quality stuff, so make sure to check that out. And then lastly, if you need coaching, if you need help getting your idea off the ground, if you need help validating that idea or building your audience, creating the best course or marketing an existing course, I can help you. Go to onlinecoursecoach.com/coaching and let me know what you need. Well, that is the show for today. Hey, if you're brand new to the podcast or have not been on the website for a while, you definitely want to check that out. So go to onlinecoursecoach.com. There is a videos tab. Obviously, there's the podcast area. There is a resources page where I have all the free tips and guides and sheets and videos and content that will help you market your course, create better videos, know which learning management system you should use. That's really popular. Even how to use WordPress to teach online. There's a bunch of different topics there you can learn. So again, go to onlinecoursecoach.com/resources to check those out. All right, well, that is all for today. I have some really good interviews lined up and some individual podcasts just based on a specific topic that I'll be diving into. So keep coming back to the show. Keep listening to that podcast. If you haven't subscribed, definitely do that. And I would be honored to keep teaching you here on the Online Course Coach podcast, where it is my goal to help you to teach many who will impact millions.